So, want to welcome you all to our Google Hangout. We apologize for the delay. We got on a little late today because we had some technical difficulties that involved samba music and not being able to somehow play all the things we're supposed to be playing. So, we don't know if we've got them worked out. Hopefully this all works well. If not, and I pause and then move forward, and it looks like I'm stopped and then move really fast. Don't worry, that happens on video sometimes. So I wanted to just encourage you as you're teaching your students. I've actually been teaching mine as well, and I've been having a fantastic time just kind of talking to them. This week we talked about calling, specifically about dominion, and they have work to do, and we had some phenomenal discussions about some of the things that they felt like they were put here on this earth to do. And some of them were ridiculous. Some of them said, you know, I'm supposed to be a super soldier or some kind of video game hero or something. But a lot of them had some really interesting insights, not only into themselves, but also into some of the things that their parents wanted for them, some of the things that they were learning about themselves, what they didn't like. So I want to encourage you, as you work through and help your students find the calling, the ministry that God's given them, that I really want to encourage you to take the time to listen. There's a tendency sometimes to have parents who've told us what to do and leaders who've told us what to do, and we just kind of go along with that. And just from my own personal history, when I was young, I knew that God wanted me to go into youth ministry when I was 14, actually. And I went to my youth pastor and told him asked him just to teach me everything he knew. And he didn't blow me off. He actually took the time to listen and say, okay, what is it you really want? And he kind of put me through the paces, frankly. I mean, he gave me some hard stuff to do at the beginning. Some of it was boring, making copies and doing some simple things, creating flyers, making some phone calls. This was, right at the beginning of email, so I was helping him figure some of that stuff out. But he actually took the time to listen and figure out what it is I really wanted to do. I think there are times with our students where we spend so much time talking because we want to impart truth, because we want them to hear God's word, but we don't actually stop and take the time to listen and think through what is it you're trying to say, and not just, let me just push this, but let me take the time and listen and hear you. And make sure not only as a communication person, one of the biggest things for us is not just about opening your ears, hearing the words, but understanding the heart behind them. What are these students saying? And I had some phenomenal interaction with some of my students who basically just said, listen, this is kind of what I think I want to do. And I said, well, why aren't we helping you figure that out right now? But the other thing I told my students, which was a challenge to you and a challenge to me as well, is I told my students that I wasn't going to let them use the excuse that they're young. I didn't buy that. Just because you're young doesn't mean you can't be learning, doesn't mean you can't be growing, and doesn't mean that you can't be leading. So how can I help you lead in the area that you feel called to? So with that being said, I want to take a few questions, but I just want to encourage you, listen, and then give them the space to do the things that God meant for them to do. What do we have today, Jonathan?
Yeah, we've got some general questions, especially related to just the progress of their students in the middle of the year now. We have somebody asking, they have students who are kind of getting behind in their reading, and so she's trying to make sure that their students don't get discouraged to where they just drop out altogether. So how, as a leader, would you handle approaching the students or keeping them engaged even if they can't seem to keep up?
So I think you've got to come at this from a lot of different angles, actually. I don't think you're going to come up with one simple solution. I can't just hand you one that says, well, you just do this one thing and everything will be fine. I don't think that's always going to work, because you have a variety of students. They're all motivated by different things. Some of them are motivated by just the finishing the book, and that's something that they want to get through it. They want to get it done. They want to get everything signed off. They're checked off. They get everything. That's just their personality. But not everybody's like that. And there's this tendency to kind of go, well, why don't you do it more like Jimmy? He just does the book and we don't have to push him. A couple of opportunities here. The first one is to think through, how are you engaging their parents? That's the first question, especially when you're dealing with Trek students, but even when you're dealing with Journey students. How are you engaging their parents? If their parents are disconnected from this process, there's a good likelihood that they think it's not important to their parents, and at a certain point, that's a demotivator. Not necessarily that it inherently means they won't do it, It just means that if their parents don't say it has value, their parents don't think it's important, if their parents even maybe critique it and say they don't think it's a good idea, that's going to be something they're going to have to work against. So how can you engage their parents to help them in this process? One of the things that I've been doing with my daughter, and I've seen some other leaders doing with their students, is they regularly check in. Hey, how's it going? What did you finish this week? What's going on? What did you say for this question? My daughter and I have been checking in pretty much every night just to say, so what did you think of this question, or what stuck out to you? Or we've made it a point of discussion on a regular basis. And as the parent, I now know that when she shows up at that group, not only does she have her work done, but she's also prepared to have some of the deeper conversations I'm hoping she has not only with her small group leader, but with her friends. The second component to this motivation, I think, has to be the understanding that some people are motivated by the community. They are going to be together, and if they know that their friends are finishing, then they will finish as well. So think through, if what's motivating them is, I'm with my friends all did it, I'll make sure I get it done. Now you've engaged a person who knows that, you know what, this is a social thing for me. And to not do it basically takes something away from my friends. So you may need to even sit down with your small group and communicate with them. Listen, by not finishing the work, you've kind of taken yourself out of the conversation, which means we kind of miss you in this conversation. We need you fully engaged, and to be fully engaged, you need to be prepared. Can you be prepared for us? If not for you, for us as a group. Because we miss something when you're not adding your thoughts, your ideas, your emotions. All of those things are missing from our group when you're not doing it. The last thing you may think about is some people are motivated by external incentives. How are you incentivizing this? Sometimes that's a gift. Sometimes that's a T-shirt or a coffee mug or a backpack or something. You can get all those on the store. Sometimes that's just time with the group. We're all going to go out for a steak dinner. The goal for me, especially with Trek and Journey, is that the students are moving together. So keep them on pace. If they're falling behind, that's okay, but keep them together. Don't basically make them do the last lesson so you've lost them from the conversation. What I would encourage you strongly to do, because we're about to head into a great season, because you're going to hit Thanksgiving and then you're going to hit Christmas, and those usually have breaks attached to them. So here's my encouragement to you. If they're a week or two, they've kind of fallen off, just tell them, listen, can you bring it to me on Sunday, because we'll probably go to church on Sunday during those weeks, and just kind of make sure I'll come in and check all your work and make sure it's all signed off. But you've got essentially three dates where you can catch up 3 weeks worth of work, because you won't have had to do any more work to catch up, because we're going to bump that out because of the Christmas break. Use these holiday times to kind of help them right the ship so that when they start the new year, they're on pace with everyone else. I think what you need to understand is that there is no simple solution. You're going to have to know your students and begin figuring out what motivates them. And what motivates them might not be the same for every single person in your group. So don't assume that just because you're passing out gift cards or you're giving everybody a T-shirt that that's what's going to make it work. You're going to have to start asking yourself questions, because what you're dealing with here is not a single problem, it's a culture. And you need to begin creating a culture that is social, that is parent engaged, that has external motivations, that has all of these things. When you do all those things, it'll be very difficult for a student to say, well, I can't get motivated to keep up with this. All of those components create a culture where the expectation is there, both on the parent's part and the student's part. There are external motivations, but you have, in essence, created a space that they can begin working in a way that holds them accountable, that keeps them moving, and keeps them growing.
So if I'm a student and I haven't done my work for the last 3 weeks,
Yep.
and I'm probably not going to do it going forward, how should a leader respond to a student like that?
Well, first of all, I continue to encourage, one, that they do the next week. Sometimes part of the problem is we say, well, you got to finish the one from 3 weeks ago before you get to do the one that we're doing. And that's problematic. Realistically, you basically left them out of the conversation that's continuing if you're basically telling them they're only allowed to participate in the conversation once they've caught up. I think the key here and the most important part is Let them continue moving forward. But the ones that they're behind on, 2, 3 weeks behind on, you need to ask them a question. You need to ask them really directly. What is it you want? Do you want to finish this book? Or is this just something you're doing to be social? Does this deep learning matter to you? Are you trying to push for an award? You need to start asking some serious questions, because here's the thing. Sometimes the answer to the problem is not what you think it is. Sometimes you think the kid's being lazy. And I had a student when I was teaching a journey group, and a lot of people probably looked at that kid and thought he was lazy. But the truth of the matter was, I sat down and I worked with him on some of his verses and realized that he had a learning disability. And he was struggling. This kid put in the time. I watched him literally go over and over and over and over a verse and still couldn't say it to me. He was so frustrated, he was ready to give up. He was ready to quit. And everybody else would have said, well, he's just lazy. He didn't get his work done. He didn't prepare. But that's not the case. Sometimes we got to ask some deeper questions about what's really going on in your heart and mind here. I'm not interested in you learning a bunch of information just for that sake. I want you to put God's word into your heart, into your soul, so that God can begin to use it to shape you and mold you and change you into the person he meant for you to be. I want the focus to be on your growth, and I see this resource, Trek, Journey, as a tool to help you grow. Don't lose sight of the fact that this is about helping them grow spiritually, not about finishing a book. You may find out that something's been going on in their home. It didn't have anything to do with the book, but they're behind. You may need to stop and ask some deeper questions to show them that you care and to help them create an individualized plan for catching up. But that's why we have small group leaders. That's why I've always encouraged small group leaders to never be in a small group of students bigger than 5 or 6. They need to know those things that are going on in their life. They need to be in their lives asking those questions, trying to figure out what's going on. And if that means you've got to give some extra help to certain kids, then that's maybe what it means. If you had my son, not my daughter, but my son, he's special. He's special needs. He goes to special classes at school. And guess what? If you expect him to do what everybody else is doing, it's not going to work. You're going to have to figure out what the student needs, and that may involve you asking really good questions to really find out and dig into what's going on. You know what I found? I found that when I did that with those students, we started learning, how do you learn? What are the reasons you can't remember this verse? Some of them thought they were stupid, and the truth was they just didn't even know how they learned. Once we figured some of that stuff out, they raced ahead. They caught up to everybody else and passed them. Sometimes the issue is we want everybody to do it exactly the same way, and it's just not going to work that way. You have to begin thinking that God created these unique individuals, these students, to be his disciples. He didn't mean for them all to follow through and get it exactly done as everybody else did. I want to encourage you to begin asking questions. What's going on? How can I help you? Because when they know that you care, you can begin holding them accountable when they're not doing what they're supposed to do.
So as a leader, there's lots of requirements with the Trek program or Journey, and so how do I, in my head, justify being flexible with certain students and figuring out meeting their needs, yet continuing this program that's been put in place? How do I balance that in my head, and how does that play out?
Well, I think that the requirements that have been put in place to finish awards obviously have things attached to them, scholarships, that kind of stuff at the end of them. I think the bigger question essentially in a curriculum like this is to think through, this is designed to help the majority of your students. Most of your students should be able to fall into this and be able to do what we're asking them to do. The recognition is that not all of them will make this work for them. Some of them are going to have a hard time. This isn't any different than school. So if you're a public school teacher, you have this problem. You know that this group of my class, they're going to get A's. They don't even have to do anything. They probably finished their homework before they even got home. They are awesome students. Then you've got that middle group of kids who are going to need some attention. I may need a little help, but the parents are helping and everything's going on. And then you've got some students who, listen, I could spend all day with these 3 kids, and it's not going to make a gigantic difference. I think the key is adjusting your expectations and recognizing that, you know what, if I have to choose, and this is going to be a horrible thing for me to say, but if I have to choose between finishing a book and really addressing the spiritual needs of the students with where they're at right now with something like the essentials, then I would rather choose addressing where they're at and what they need than trying to make sure that everybody finishes that book. Because deep down, they are at different places. And you have to be willing to admit that. And trying to funnel everybody through one singular program that everybody does the exact same thing, it just may not work for some of them. Start asking yourself, what is the outcome that I want? Do I want students to finish books, and that's somehow going to guarantee something? Or do I want students to know, love, and serve Jesus, and I can find a method, a piece, an essential, a component, some other way of doing it? At the end of the day, I want students to know, love, and serve Jesus, and Awana is an amazing tool to help them do that. But if you've set expectations on students who just can't keep up, who have learning disabilities, who have other things going on in their home life, who have no real knowledge of God prior to this, they just showed up, and you've got to adjust your expectations, begin thinking, how do I get them from where they are to where they need to be? And forcing them through a Bible study is not always the way to do that. Ask yourself, where are they? Where do they need to get to? And how do I get them into a Bible study? Because maybe there are some remedial steps that need to be taken to get them ready to do that. That's why we made the essentials to begin with. The essentials were designed to help that student get up to speed so that they could move into a Bible study. But just kind of slapping everybody into the same group and saying everybody should be able to do the same things is basically like saying that every kid who goes to school should be exactly in the same place. We all know that's working super well for education. We need to recognize the kids are in different places and that God is shaping them and molding them at His rate, not ours.
So you mentioned the essentials. At this point, if students are, in their Bible study, doing the Bible study books, and they switch back into essentials, is that okay? And what's the best way to handle it at this point in the season?
Well, I guess the first thing you would have to ask is, do they want an award? If they want a book award, that's what they're going for. And the answer is no. You're not going to switch back because you won't get that. My only hesitation between if you think they started off ready for a Bible study and you're seeing like kind of a regression, what I might do for those students who I'm feeling like maybe this is a bit too much, but they have grown up in church, they do have some background, that kind of thing. What I might do is have them do some components. So the way I think of it is there are kind of 3 steps to get them into a Bible study. So the essentials were designed specifically for students who were new, who don't know a whole lot about the faith. The Bible studies were designed for students who did grow up in Awana, who knew what they were talking about, who have a background in it. These were designed to challenge their faith by making them slow down and work out their faith in fear and trembling. There are some spaces in between that we can work through. So the first step would be moving them from the essentials to a Bible study, but not expecting them to do all of the work. So that maybe they do the reading, they read through the lesson, they do the introduction, and maybe they do some of the devotions. The next step would be essentially get them to do all the devotions and the introduction and all the reading, and then finally do, okay, now memorize the verse. Well, once you memorize the verse, you're into the Bible study, you're on par. But some people are going to say, listen, I have a really hard time memorizing. Can I just do these components? Yes, you can, but you won't finish a book award. So if the motivation is to finish the book award to keep progressing, then they're going to have to do all of the work. But for some of them, it's not about the book award. Some of them, it's just about the learning process. So think through which pieces will aid them in the learning process that they can take on right now. I can do this now, I can add this next, and then I can add the next one after that. Think through which pieces you need to add as you kind of bring them up to speed, and think through how quickly you're doing that, because some people want to rush them from an essentials to a... But the only reason I would move backwards is you found out this kid doesn't know anything about the Bible. I thought they did when they got here, and we just realized, oh, shoot, you know nothing. Okay, well, then go back. But otherwise, I just start thinking about how can I take off a couple of pieces. You know what? Why don't we hold off on memorizing the verse? Just do the introduction, read the stuff, and do some of the devotions. Like, ease up on some of the requirements, knowing that they're not going to get a book award, but will potentially begin engaging in a deeper level, begin participating in conversation, and then you can work them back into the Bible study right from there.
And how can I, as a leader, emphasize the student who is now knowing that they're probably not going to get an award, let's say, but how do they keep them motivated without that award structure in place?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the thing that I've been noticing with my students is that they're, again, like I said earlier, they're all motivated by different things. I think the thing that I've come to realize with a bunch of them, though, is they're actually there, a good chunk of them are there for one of two reasons. Because I have several students who are not going to get a book award. I can already tell you right now, they're not going to finish. They're not mentally in that space, and they are just, I can tell some of them are probably struggling in school as well. So they seem to come for two reasons. One, they come for the social aspect. They come because their friends are there. That's a phenomenal thing, because if their friends are doing the Bible studies, you can create a culture where they will eventually get into it. The other reason that a lot of them are coming, we don't often talk about this because we think, well, they don't really care. They really want to know about God. Really, truly, deeply want to know about God. Who is this God guy? Why do you guys keep talking about him like he's a big deal? What am I supposed to do with him if he's real? Am I supposed to talk to him? Does he talk back? How does this whole thing work? They have a lot of questions. This is a phenomenal time, especially with Trek students, to just allow them to answer some questions that they're going, I don't get it. Those kids aren't showing up because they want to finish a book or an award or want to get something signed off. They're showing up because they have deep spiritual needs. And if we ignore the deep spiritual needs in favor of finishing a book to get a sign-off, we've kind of missed the point. The point is that they know, love, and serve Jesus. If they think Christianity, if they think their faith is about making sure that they say the right verse and do a bunch of work so they can get something signed off, they're going to be sadly disappointed when they realize that's not what Christianity is. I love Awana. I love Awana. But there will be no Sparks books in heaven. Okay? Just clarifying. There'll be no Trek books there. Because you won't need the book. You'll meet the man. So, for me, this is about him. Always about him. About Jesus. That's what it is. This is a tool to help them get closer to Jesus. And I want you to understand that you need to have the freedom to begin thinking through with your students and with your other leaders, what's the best way to get them there? If those students are motivated by the deep questions that they're asking, these Trek books will help them answer it. But saying the verse, if that's the thing that's kind of, well, I don't know if I can do all that, they'll come around. Give them time. They'll understand. And when you build a culture of people, a group that's doing it consistently, when they jump in and engage, trust me, they'll do it with them. Social peer pressure is one of the strongest motivators. Perhaps, and I've called it before, the second most powerful force in the universe, next to the Holy Spirit. Because if your friends do it and want you to do it, then you're probably going to do it, even if you're not sure why. Why are we all wearing this color, teal blue? All of them wearing teal blue lately. I keep thinking Target's selling it, a whole bunch of other people are selling it, but the only reason it's working is because everybody thinks, well, I like that color, so they all go get it. Why? Because social peer pressure is essentially pushing them toward that. What would happen if the social peer pressure in your group was directed toward engaging God, engaging this book, and helping them realize that it draws them into Him, into His story, helping them understand who they are, helping understand who He is? If they miss a couple of days of the devotions, but they get the point, I think at that point we would recognize that they're starting to know, love, and serve Jesus. We're still getting where we want to go. I want to see them finish their book. Don't mishear me. Anybody out there who thinks I'm saying, oh, don't finish the... I want them to finish their book. That's what we're working them toward. but I'm saying there may be some steps in between that we have to be careful to think through and ask some long and hard questions of our students and not simply make it about, well, I got the sign off, that's all that matters. Any other questions?
I think that's good. That
Okay.
kind of addresses a lot of issues that different leaders are struggling with right now in this season. So,
Well, let me just wrap up by encouraging you. I had a couple weeks ago where I had some students, some new ones show up, and we got the opportunity to talk about the gospel and talk about why God put us here and how He made us different. And there are moments when I feel like, you know what, I don't know, because the kids left and they didn't really, put their faith and trust in Jesus, walk forward, walk up the aisle, and bow and pray and do all the other things. There are moments where we get hung up on that and we think, well, we didn't close the deal. They didn't say the prayer, so we failed. And the truth is, I don't know that that's actually the reality. The reality is I planted some seeds. They heard some people talk about the gospel. They began being exposed to it, or if someone else had told them about the gospel before, it got watered. Sometimes we want microwave Christianity. We want to put something in, push the 1-minute button, and out pops a whole bag of popcorn. Jesus used farming metaphors. It takes time. Be patient. You know what? I'm just going to admit this. Some of them drive me nuts, okay? Seriously. They drive me crazy. A couple of them, I just want to duct tape them to a chair. And frankly, I know their parents, they probably wouldn't be surprised if they showed up and one day they were duct taped to a chair. But those students especially, need me to show the love and patience of Jesus so that they begin to understand what does it mean to follow Him. What does it mean to love Him? What does it mean to give your life away to something that's hard? They know sometimes they're being difficult. They know sometimes they're looking for attention. But they also know that when you are patient and when you are kind and when you demonstrate the fruit of the Spirit to them, they begin to understand that God has done something in you that you want to see in them. Keep working. Keep going. God is using you, even in those moments when you're not sure. He is testing your patience through them to make you the person He meant for you to be. Sometimes they are the suffering that He sent, just so that you would learn what it was like for Him when He had 12 disciples who spent most of their time arguing about who was the greatest. Now you understand some of what Jesus dealt with, and you begin walking in His shoes. You are becoming more like Him. God bless you as you grow not only in your faith, but in following the Master. God bless. Have a great week.